So, a little story with why I picked this up. I wasn't going to at first, but as you might have heard in the weeks following getting my Neo Pocket Air Mini, I've had some issues. The PAM is the most powerful handheld for the price currently, and even more so at its early access price that I got it for. But I'm apprehensive to recommend Neo in the future unless you order through AliExpress because of the issues with pre-order and backers not getting their devices first. Now I'm mostly apprehensive due to the cracking my unit has. The interior of the shell has a metal frame on the part underneath the screen, and the cracking on my shell is coming from under the screen. Neo has had cracking issues in the past on previous handhelds, and a few others have told me that they've had the same issues recently. I requested a new shell for my Neo and they sent me a new one, no questions asked. But I'm waiting and seeing how bad it gets. During this time, Ambernic has released the RG Vita, and while not as powerful as the Pocket Air Mini, Gamma has made a version of his OS, Gamma OS Next, for it, and it will be out soon. Gamma's OS is great because it removes a lot of the fluff from Android, because Android isn't made for gaming devices, it's made for phones. So by removing a lot of the extra fluff, Gamma is able to squeeze out some extra power from the handhelds. Since some games on the RG Vita base model perform similarly to the 3GB PAM, I think it's a good time to talk about the RG Vita. Now, while the PAM is the best in the price point currently, and Neo has helped me with my issues, it'd be nice if I had a device that I could recommend that's similar that doesn't have those issues in the first place. So that's the idea with this doohickey. I'll be reviewing it on its own today, stock OS. Then later on when Gamma OS Next comes out for the RG Vita in the public build, I will review that. Keep in mind that I have the RG Vita base version, not the Pro. It's the one closest in price to the PAM 3GB model, so if it's underperforming in some way in this review, remember that you can always upgrade to the Pro version for a little bit extra and it will do better. Also, I paid for this handheld myself with my own hard-earned money because I recently got a job, and Ambernic has no say over the content of this review, so hashtag not sponsored. The RG Vita is of course a bit of an odd duck. It looks like a Vita, quacks like a Vita, doesn't play like a duck. So few handhelds do these days. Neo doesn't have that problem though, but it does look like a Vita, and lucky for the audience, I happen to have a PSP and a PS Vita, so you'll get to see a comparison of it on screen. The RG Vita is incredibly similar to the PS Vita in about every possible way. It's like Sony said, we had the right idea with the Vita, but let's make it again and not give a crap about whether it fits in your pocket. Which is great, because at the point that you're putting analog sticks on a handheld, you're already saying that it's not going to fit well into the pocket unless it's a clamshell. Once you add sticks, I'd much rather have companies focus on giving us a more comfortable handheld with full-sized buttons and sticks. In terms of the size of the RG Vita, it's about an inch longer than the Vita, while being very similar in all other dimensions. The added length allows for a larger screen, D-pad, buttons, and sticks, and while it is still a flat slab in the back, it's a little more comfy than the original Vita due to the added size. For pocket friendliness, it will fit in jeans, but not skinny jeans or women's jeans, the sticks being the main issue with that. In pants, it does fit. It's a tight fit though, and I worry about the health of the sticks in the long run. But this is definitely a bag handheld. It's also sizable enough to be a good home handheld without being as heavy as other machines. If you're 30 plus, you probably don't care about looking cool anymore, so just get a fanny pack like me and then put it in that. This is also a good spot for it to be in because when compared to the Pocket Air Mini, it's the same height, and the RG Vita is much wider and features full-size buttons and almost full-size sticks. The PAM has butt cheeks though, which keeps it from living up to the pocket portion of its name. The RG Vita does fit more comfortably in my pocket than the PAM does though. I wouldn't have minded if the Vita had some junk in the trunk. The extra booty would have been nice for gripping when I'm playing some shooters. The screen on the Vita is a massive 5.56 inch 16:9 IPS touchscreen. It's definitely the biggest I've reviewed thus far. It's 720p, but that's plenty for retro gaming, and it's most of what you'll be doing since 3GB RAM is barely enough to run Android as is. The glass on the screen is an all-glass front just like the PS Vita. Some have had concerns about what that means for durability, but I've had a PS Vita since a year after launch and haven't had any issues, even without a screen protector. Also, please ignore that it says Vincent Chang on the Vita that I have. I bought it used. I didn't rob a child. The RG Vita's glass can be a print magnet, but you can't see them on the black model anywhere but where the display is, since that's the only part that lights up. I've also dropped it a couple of times already, not from very high, just from like the arm of my chair to the ground because my cat knocks it off. I'm just gonna have to get like an end table or something, but it has fallen a few times and it is just fine. There's been no issues with it, no cracking, no scratches, nothing. This screen is huge though. It's taller than the Pocket Air Mini screen and much wider, which means 4x3 games will still be bigger on the Vita. I wouldn't upgrade for just the screen though. Bigger is better, but the size difference here is less than a centimeter. The two are close enough in size that I wouldn't say that the Vita is an upgrade, but being 16:9, you can enable widescreen hacks, and those will look pretty nice. Also, the obvious benefit being that wider screen content will be much larger here. If you're planning on playing a lot of GBA and PSP, then this is a perfect fit for you. No need to look any further. The screen is massive and GBA looks great. You can almost see Nathan in Castlevania Circle of the Moon. It's right on the verge of being playable now. Other GBA games look great too. This screen size is kind of like what the RG Cube XX did for the GBC. Speaking of the GBC, the screen is about the same height as the Cube XX, and since 10x9 is a little bit wider than it is tall, it'll be bigger on the Vita too. So if you have a Linux-based handheld and you want an upgrade, but don't plan on much PS2, this is a pretty good option. PS1, GBA, WonderSwan, GBC, GB, and pretty much every system is going to look great on here, with PSP being immaculate. And you know it has to be good when I have to bust out the thesaurus to describe it. There is pillar boxing on many systems, but if you have the black model, you can hardly see it against the black shell. DS is playable here as well, but you'll want screens side by side, which doesn't look great unless you're doing touch-only games like Wizard of Oz, The Yellow Brick Road, or WarioWare Touch, and you're holding the system vertical, and then it's stacked like that. That looks fine, it's just a little weird to hold. But if you're cool with that, it'll be smooth. 3DS doesn't run the best, but the screen spacing issue here is even worse due to the top screen being very wide. We won't really have a device that's good for 3DS unless someone makes one specifically for the 3DS, you know, like the Thor. PS2 is where we get to have a bit of a problem though, and if it can't do PS2 well, it won't do GameCube well either. The T820 chipset is able to play PS2 and GameCube, but not any better than the Heliotech G90 in the Pocket Air Mini. It's actually slightly worse. When I played Devil May Cry 3 native resolution on the PAM, I averaged 49 FPS to 53 FPS on the handheld's max power mode. This is when the fan is like blasting, loud, whining. On the Vita, it hit 37 on high power mode. Both had slowdowns. This means that you can expect most of the PS2 games to be similar or worse performance on the PAM. If you're wanting this for PS2, I'd get the Pro version though instead, though 30 FPS capped games like Okami should be perfectly fine on the base model. But N64 and Dreamcast run perfect on it. The real perfect fit for this handheld is PSP on 3x scaling. The PAM has a less wide screen, which is resulting in shrinking of the PSP, making it smaller than it is even on an original PSP. This is of course built for wide content. I keep mine on 2x though, just in case. I've been having a blast playing Phantasy Star Portable on it. The controls are pretty decent too. The D-pad and backseat buttons use rubber membranes, and the D-pad is a little bit loose and a bit hard to press. It's not overly tight, which is bad for fighters, but it's not overly loose, which is bad for everything else. I'd say it's acceptable, but if you're picky, it's a little harder to press, and it might be not tight enough for you. The backseat buttons appear to be the same ones as the cubes, so they're pretty decently sized. They're a little bit bigger, I think. You wouldn't even notice the size difference though, like they're very slightly bigger. Analog sticks are between normal sized and the Pocket Air Minis. They're on the smaller side, but not too small. I found them comfortable to use on Phantasy Star Portable. The camera in that game is on the D-pad, so I map the D-pad to the right stick and control the camera that way. The sticks have a larger removable head, and the stick itself is taller than the PAM. If you end up getting both of these, the heads can be swapped with each other. I tried both, but I prefer the Joy-Con style sticks that the Amberneck model goes with. The area around the sticks also has LGBT lighting. Happy Pride Month, if I get this up on time. And this light up area is larger than it is on my other devices. They get to be very bright too. Even on low settings, they reflect off of my glasses and blind me in the night, so I like to keep them low to off. The extra button layout is a little annoying for me though. Home/back buttons, select, and start are all very small, about the size of an estradiol tablet, a unit of measurement that only the trans girls in the audience will get. Happy Pride Month again. The Amberneck and home button are both on the left, and select start are on the right. I'd greatly prefer for select and start to be in the minus plus position from the Joy-Cons. They're much easier to reach that way, and there's less confusion about what's where. The shoulder buttons are fine, but in keeping to the Vita aesthetic, they're a little thin and unfortunately are not transparent. They did give it triggers though, just not real triggers. They're shaped like them, but don't fully pivot like a controller one does. They're very shallow. That means that if you're a racing game fan, you won't like these triggers because half presses aren't possible. Shooters also won't be able to fire on a hair trigger for rapid fire on semi-automatic weapons. On the bottom is downfiring speakers, which sucks, but it's better than backfiring, headphone jack, and a micro SD slot. At the top is power, volume, and a bonus mappable button, power light, and USB-C 18-watt charging, which is the most out of every device I own, aside from the Switch 2 and the Steam Deck, and no video out. The Pro model has video out over USB-C, and the base has Wi-Fi 5 and Bluetooth 5, with the Pro model having better. The battery life is 8 hours on the easier to run stuff, and that's it for the hardware features. There isn't a back touch panel like the PS Vita, but you already won't be able to play PS Vita on this. The emulation for PS Vita just isn't there yet, so it's hard to know exactly what's needed to run it. On the software side, the Amberneck button can quick launch the RG front end, but but can be mapped to others like Daigisho. There's also Ambernick's AI, but you won't catch me touching that stuff. If I wanted someone to half-ass anything I asked them to do, I'd just hire myself. When AI doesn't know how to answer something, it lies. When it translates, it does so very over-literally, which gives you the gist but lacks the authorial flair that comes from a living writer. For me, I love this handheld. I have some nitpicks, but I like it as much as the Pocket Air Mini. I'll probably play it more though since it's larger and more comfortable. But I think that they're close enough that I can recommend the RG Vita over the PAM as long as you're not playing GameCube and PS2. If you are, get something like the RG Pro, or if you can afford it, one of the Retroid systems. But we still have the upcoming public release of Gamma OS next, and if that increases the performance to the same range as the Pocket Air Mini, then I think the RG Vita is a very easy recommendation from me. It'd be just as good with none of the drawbacks of the PAM. To me, the RG Rotate plus the RG Vita make for an ultimate combo of retro gaming. I'm not playing PS2 and GameCube on the go. I just use my PC for that. So the Rotate is perfect for going everywhere, and occasionally using it to track life when playing Magic the Gathering. Then the Vita comes in whenever I want to play anything wider than GBC. I'm going to start doing scores because people don't understand the nuances of my sophisticated vocabulary. A lot of people don't get that I can whine about a lot of stuff, but most of it won't factor into my opinion of it, at least greatly. Ambernick has achieved what they set out to do. Sell us a Vita and give us a PSP instead. 10 out of 10 on the marketing. As for the handheld, I think if you're stuck between the Rotate and this, that you should just get the Vita. For its price and what it does with its price, I think it's a great first Android and handheld in general. It's not a powerhouse, but we're rating it on its price range, and this price range is for medium-powered handhelds. This meets expectations in most regards and surpasses others. This is good and large for the price. It's an 8 out of 10 for me, but if you have something more expensive, you don't really need this. Who would I recommend this for? It's best for 3 kinds of people. People who want to play PSP and GBA at its best. The only way you're going to get better for these two is by spending double or more. The screen is massive and they scale well. I'd also recommend it for people who want a cheaper but functional system for N64, Dreamcast, and DS, and want to do a little bit of widescreen hacking as well. And lastly, for someone who wants to upgrade from Linux to Android without going too crazy or as an entry-level Android system. Who should stay away? Anyone who wants something that fits in the pocket or wants to reliably play PS2 or Vita, or anyone looking for an EDC. This is not a great EDC device unless you're already carrying a bag everywhere. Last of all, what do we have for alternatives? If you can spare an extra 40 or so, you can get the RG Vita Pro, which has a better chip and will run more PS2, especially once Gamma OS Next comes out. The Mangmi Air X is also a good alternative for the RG Vita base version. The Pocket Air Mini is similar in price and slightly better performance for a similar price, but it's a smaller screen. If you're well endowed in the wallet, you should consider an Odin or an RP5 or 6, especially if you want to play more modern games via GameHub or Game Native. And that's it for this one. Don't forget to tip your Overlord with a like, hype, and a sub. Thanks to the members on YouTube like Dragon Fanatic, AstroPixie YT, Linky, and Willie Pete, and I'll see you all next time. I got a job recently and my boss's demands are getting really weird. He told me to walk into a store and ask them to put money in a bag. I think I'm doing bank deposits for him, but he never takes the money to the actual bank. Huh. Oh, that sounds like a problem for future Nimzy. Bye!